She walked into the studio wearing a patched-up dress and shoes 2 sizes too small. No parent by her side, no music to back her up. Just one voice, and a heart full of love for the mother lying in a hospital bed. Most people in that room thought she wouldn't last 10 seconds, but when 7-year-old Lila opened her mouth to sing, the entire studio fell silent, including one judge whose past came crashing back with every word she sang, because the song she chose was a secret only he and one other person in the world had ever known. And that little girl, she just might be the daughter he never knew he had. This is a story about love lost and found, about sacrifice, second chances, and the power of a child's voice to heal what time tried to erase. Stay with us, because what starts as a simple audition turns into a miracle no one expected. The hospital room was quiet except for the steady beeping of machines and the soft hum of fluorescent lights. Outside, a cold wind swept through the trees, brushing brittle leaves against the window. Inside, 7-year-old Lila Anderson sat silently beside her mother's hospital bed, her small fingers wrapped tightly around a pale, unmoving hand. Lila's eyes were puffy from crying, though no more tears came. She had cried herself dry days ago. Now she simply sat, hoping, whispering, praying. "Please wake up, Mama," she murmured for what must have been the 100th time. "I'll be a good girl, I promise. Just, please." Her mother, Venus, had been unconscious ever since the accident. One moment they were walking to the market. The next, a drunk driver had come speeding around the corner, and everything went dark. Venus had shoved Lila out of the way just in time. She'd taken the full force of the motorcycle. That was 5 days ago. The doctor said she had a strong will to live, but that her body needed time. That's what they always said. But time didn't pay for hospital beds or medicine or the meals Lila had stopped eating. A soft knock came at the door. Lila turned. Standing there was Mrs. Nora, their landlady, a silver-haired woman with kind eyes and a voice as gentle as warm tea. "Lila, sweetheart, have you eaten anything today?" she asked softly. Lila shook her head. Mrs. Nora stepped inside with a hesitation. "Come on now, I made some toast and jam, just a little. You can't help your mama if you faint." "I don't want to go home," Lila whispered. "It's too quiet without her. And I don't want to leave her alone." The old woman gave a sad smile and knelt beside the girl. "You're such a brave little thing," she said, brushing a strand of hair behind Lila's ear. "But brave doesn't mean you shouldn't eat." "I'll eat here," Lila said. Just stay with me." Mrs. Nora nodded and sat down beside her. "We're behind on the rent, you know," she said quietly, almost to herself. "And the hospital. Well, I heard the nurses talking. Your mama's bills are piling up." Lila's chin quivered. She tried not to cry. She clenched her fists instead. "There must be a way," she said softly. "Lila, you're just a child." "No, I can help," the girl said firmly, turning to face her. "I have to." The old woman sighed, torn between admiration and worry. After a long pause, she seemed to remember something. Her eyes lit up slightly. "There's a singing contest," she said, "at Harper Music Studios. A big one. They're holding auditions for kids this weekend. Winner gets a scholarship and even the runners-up get prize money." Lila blinked. "A singing contest?" "Yes. I heard it on the radio this morning," Mrs. Nora nodded. "And I've heard you sing, little one. You have the sweetest voice I've ever heard, like a little bird on a spring morning." Lila blushed. "It's worth a try, isn't it?" the woman said, her voice gentler now. "Even if you don't win, maybe someone important hears you. Sometimes the right song reaches the right heart." Lila looked back at her mother. Venus looked so peaceful, so far away. "I used to sing for Mama when she cooked," she whispered. "She said my voice made her heart feel light." Then to herself, "Maybe it can make her heart wake up too." She stood up as if something had clicked inside her. "I'll do it," she said. "For Mama," Mrs. Nora nodded. "Then we'd better find you something to wear, child." "I'll wear the dress Mama fixed for my birthday," Lila said quickly. It's a little short now, but it's still pretty. The old woman's are is filled with tears. Then you go and sing with all the love you've got. That's all any of us can do. As the sun set behind the hospital walls, painting the windows in soft gold, Lila squeezed her mother's hand one last time and whispered, "I'm going to sing for you, Mama. I'm going to save you." And with that, a quiet little girl stepped out into a loud, uncertain world, armed with nothing but her voice, a patched-up dress, and a love too deep for her small heart to carry alone. The next morning, the city air was crisp, tinged with the scent of distant rain and car exhaust. Lila stood in front of the grand glass building of Harper Music Studios, her tiny hand clutching the straps of a canvas tote bag. Inside was her mother's mended dress, blue cotton with faded lace, and a small water bottle wrapped in a napkin from Mrs. Nora. To everyone else passing by, she looked like a child waiting for someone, until she took a deep breath and walked through the studio doors alone. The lobby was buzzing with sound. Cameras flashed, children in designer outfits practiced scales, and parents flitted about with forms and clipboards. Lila tried not to stare. She approached the registration table and waited patiently until a tall woman in a red blazer noticed her. "Hi there, sweetie," the woman said, kneeling slightly. "Are you here with someone?" "No, ma'am," Lila said politely. "I'm here to audition." The woman blinked in surprise. "And how old are you?" 7. The staff nearby exchanged glances. One man whispered, "She's alone?" "My mama's in the hospital," Lila added quietly. "I want to win, so—" "I can help her." The woman's face softened. She glanced down at the old sneakers peeking out from under the hem of Lila's coat, then back up at the girl's solemn eyes. "What's your name, sweetheart?" "Lila Anderson." At that, the woman froze. So did the assistant beside her. A beat passed. Too long, too silent. "Is something wrong?" Lila asked, tilting her head. "No, not at all," the woman quickly said, offering a gentle smile. "It's just a very familiar name." She handed Lila a clipboard and crouched to help her fill out the form. When they reached the space, "For emergency contact," Lila paused. "Can I write Mrs. Nora? She's not family, but she's helping me." The woman nodded slowly. "That's just fine." After signing in, Lila was led to a large waiting area where dozens of children sat. Some had vocal coaches whispering advice. Others practiced with earbuds in their ears. Lila sat in the corner, quietly humming a tune only she and her mother knew. Hours passed. Finally, a voice called out, "Contestant 206, Lila Anderson?" She stood up, clutching her bag tightly. A production assistant led her down a hallway and into the audition room. The space was huge, intimidating. 3 judges sat behind a long table, and in the middle, under a warm spotlight, was a single microphone stand. At the far end of the panel sat a man Lila recognized instantly from television and YouTube videos. Zane Harper. The Zane Harper. Her eyes lit up. "Mama always said I should learn to sing like you," she whispered under her breath. Zane glanced at the form in front of him, then looked up, startled. "Your name is Lila Anderson?" he asked slowly. "Yes, sir," she replied with a small smile. "That's my full name." Zane leaned forward. A strange tightness wrapped around his chest. His fingers gripped the paper. There was something in her face. Her eyes, maybe. Something achingly familiar. "Do you have a track?" one of the other judges asked. Lila shook her head. "No music. I'd like to sing it plain. That's how Mama likes it best." "All right," Zane said softly. "Go ahead, sweetheart." She took a deep breath and stepped forward. The room fell still. Then she began to sing. Her voice was soft but clear, like a silver thread drifting through quiet morning air. No fancy notes, no acrobatics, just raw, unfiltered feeling. She sang a lullaby her mother wrote, a song that had never been recorded, never been heard outside their small apartment kitchen. The melody floated like a whisper, and Zane froze. His heart stuttered in his chest. He knew that song. He had heard it once, on his birthday, long ago, in a tiny rented apartment with peeling wallpaper and mismatched plates. Back when Venus had brought out a little cake and said, "This is all I could do, but it's made with love." And then she sang to him. That same song. Zane's hand trembled. A sharp pain hit him right in the center of his chest. When Lila finished, the room was silent. Then the judges applauded, softly at first, then more enthusiastically. Who needs background music when you have a voice like that? One of them whispered. Lila smiled shyly, her gaze shifting to Zane, but Zane couldn't speak. He was still staring, eyes wide, jaw clenched. A question began forming in his mind, terrifying and undeniable. Is this my daughter? The results were posted the next morning on a large bulletin board inside Harper Music Studios. Names were typed neatly in black ink, arranged by audition number. Dozens of children gathered around, their parents close behind, pointing and whispering. Lila stood quietly at the edge of the crowd, clutching the strap of her canvas tote. Her eyes scanned the list, line by line, until she found it. Contestant W206, Lila Anderson, rank. First her heart skipped a beat. I made it, she whispered. No one cheered. No camera flashes went off. There were no parents hugging her. But for Lila, that simple line on the page meant more than any parade. She turned to leave, ready to head to the practice rooms, when she heard voices behind her. Did you see who got first place, that little girl with the old shoes? Yeah, what a joke. I heard she came alone. No mom, no dad. Must have gotten help from someone. Lila paused. She didn't turn around. She had heard whispers like these before. In school, in stores, even at church. People thought poor kids didn't belong where polished floors and pianos gleamed. But this time, the whispers grew louder. At rehearsal later that day, Lila was standing near the studio door when 3 older girls approached. They wore matching sequined jackets and the same kind of smile Lila had seen too often in her short life. The kind that wasn't kind at all. Hey, one of them said, circling her. You're the one who sang yesterday, right? Lila nodded slowly. The tallest girl crossed her arms. Funny how someone with nothing gets top rank. I just sang, Lila said, her voice quiet. Sure you did. Another one scoffed. That's why Zane Harper's been watching you like a hawk, right? Did you even have to audition, or did he just give it to you? Lila's chest tightened. I don't know what you're talking about, she said softly. You don't belong here, the tallest girl snapped. Look at your clothes. This place is for professionals, not charity cases. Before Lila could step away, the girl shoved her shoulder roughly. She stumbled backward, landing hard on the polished floor. Her elbow scraped against the tile and tears welled in her eyes, not from pain but from humiliation. A deep voice cut through the hallway. What is going on here? Everyone froze. Zane Harper was standing at the end of the hall. His tall frame cast a shadow, his face unreadable but his tone was ice. The 3 girls straightened instantly, their expressions stiff with panic. Zane walked over to Lila and knelt beside her. Are you hurt? He asked gently, helping her to her feet. She nodded faintly, brushing dust off her dress. Then Zane turned to the girls, his voice firm. Do you think talent can only come from wealth? That kindness is a weakness? Let me remind you, this competition is about heart, not wardrobe. The girls lowered their heads. We're sorry, Mr. Harper, one mumbled. You will be, he said coldly. And if I hear of any more bullying, you won't just be disqualified. You'll be remembered for all the wrong reasons. The hallway fell silent as the girls retreated. Zane turned back to Lila, who stood quietly, head bowed. Why didn't you tell anyone they were bothering you? He asked. Lila shrugged. People always say I don't belong. I thought maybe they were right. Zane knelt again, gently placing a hand on her shoulder. Don't ever believe that. You earned your place here, Lila. No one gave it to you. Least of all me. She looked up at him, studying his face. You remind me of someone I used to know, he said softly. Someone brave, Someone kind. Someone who sang from the heart. My mama sings like that, Lila whispered. What's her name? Zane asked carefully. She hesitated for a moment, then smiled. Her name is Venus, Venus Anderson. Zane froze. It felt as though the world had tilted. His throat closed, his heart pounded. He opened his mouth, then closed it again. Slowly, he stood staring at her face. Those eyes, that smile, that name. He didn't need a DNA test. He knew Lila was his daughter. A silence hung between them, heavy and full of years lost. Zane took a slow, trembling breath. Lila, he said gently, I need to ask you something very important. She looked up at him with quiet curiosity. Do you know who your father is? Lila shook her head. No one ever told me, she said. Mama just says he was a dream that didn't come true. Zane's eyes filled with tears. He knelt once more, his voice breaking. Sweetheart, I think I'm your father. Lila stared at him. The words didn't register at first. Then slowly, as though a long-forgotten melody began to play in her chest, she whispered, You're my dad. Zane nodded, overcome with emotion. And there, in a quiet studio hallway, the daughter he never knew he had, and the man who'd once walked away from everything he loved stood face to face. For the first time, and the beginning of everything. The road to the hospital was quiet that evening. The sun had dipped low behind the city skyline, casting long, amber shadows across the streets. In the passenger seat of Zane Harper's sleek black car, Lila sat quietly, holding tightly to her mother's wool scarf. She hadn't spoken much since he told her the truth, and Zane, he hadn't pushed. Every few seconds he glanced at her through the corner of his eye, heart thudding like a metronome set too fast. She didn't cry. She didn't smile. She just looked out the window, lost in thought. When they arrived at the audition hospital, Lila led the way. Her footsteps were small but certain, echoing softly down the sterile hallway until they stopped in front of room 112. Zane hesitated at the door. His hand rested on the handle, but his fingers didn't move. Lila looked up at him. She's inside. He nodded, trying to breathe evenly. But nothing could have prepared him for the sight that met him when he stepped through the door. There, on the narrow hospital bed, lay Venus. She looked fragile, far thinner than he remembered. Her once glowing skin now pale, her hair brushed gently over the pillow by some kind nurse. Machines blinked quietly by her side, their rhythms steady and calm. Zane stood frozen. It had been nearly 8 years. And still in that moment, all the love, all the memories, all the regret came crashing down. He moved to the bed and sat down beside her slowly, as if afraid she might disappear if he breathed too hard. With trembling fingers, he reached for her hand. Venus, he whispered. Her hand was cold. Venus, it's me. It's Zane. His voice cracked on her name. Beside him, Lila stood still, watching closely. She's been asleep a long time, Lila whispered. But I think she still hears us. Zane bowed his head, tears spilling freely. I'm so sorry, he said. I didn't know. I never knew she was carrying our child. I never knew she was all alone. He looked at Lila, his voice barely a breath. I should have been there. Lila reached over and gently placed her mother's hand in his. Now you are. Hours passed. Zane didn't leave her side. Nurses came and went. Lila eventually curled up in the recliner with her scarf and fell asleep. But Zane stayed. He spoke to Venus softly, telling her everything. The fame, the loneliness, the hollow awards, the nights he stared out windows wondering why nothing felt whole. He told her about Lila, about the way she sang, about how brave she'd been. Then, just after midnight, her fingers twitched. Zane blinked. Venus? Another twitch. He stood, heart racing. Venus, can you hear me? A long pause. Then, slowly, her eyes fluttered open, glazed at first, unfocused. She blinked again. The world around her swam into shape, and then she saw him. Zane. She whispered, her voice dry, cracked, but unmistakably hers. He nearly collapsed. Yes, it's me. I'm here. Venus stared, confused. Is this a dream? Zane gently kissed the back of her hand. No, my love, I promise. It's real. Tears slid down the corners of her eyes. How did you know? She led me back to you, he said, nodding toward the chair. Venus turned her head slowly and saw her daughter sleeping nearby. Lila. She sang a song you once wrote for me, Zane said, voice breaking. The same words, the same melody. And the moment I heard it, I knew. Venus let out a soft sob. I taught her that song, she whispered. I told her it was the sound of love. Zane gently stroked her hair. She is the sound of love. They sat together in silence, their hands entwined like vines that had once been torn apart by time, now rejoining with care. I'm so sorry, Venus finally said. I wanted to tell you, but when you left for America, I knew if I said anything, you'd stay. And I couldn't take that from you. Zane shook his head, tears in his eyes. You were never a burden, Venus. You were my beginning, my home. He glanced back at Lila, still peacefully asleep. We have a second chance now, he said, for her, for us. Venus smiled faintly, exhaustion in every muscle, but something warm flickered in her eyes. I never stopped loving you, she whispered. Zane leaned down and kissed her forehead, pressing it gently as if to anchor himself. To the moment, I never stopped looking for you, he said, even when I didn't know I was. That night in a quiet hospital room under dim yellow lights, a family lost to time began to mend, slowly, tenderly, like a lullaby returning, after years of silence. 2 weeks had passed since Venus opened her eyes. In that short span, the sterile hospital room had transformed, filled with laughter, flowers from the studio staff, and the soft hum of lullabies hummed by a little girl at her mother's bedside. Lila never left her mother's side except to rehearse, and Zane, once a man too busy for anything but fame, now barely checked his phone. He was busy relearning how to be a father. Each day, Zane would bring breakfast, sometimes burnt, sometimes cold, but Venus never complained. She would just smile and say, "You still make terrible eggs." Then they'd laugh, and Lila would roll her eyes with a grin only a child who feels safe again can give. One evening, as Venus rested and Lila was brushing her doll's hair by the window, Zane gently took Venus's hand. "I've been thinking," he said softly. "Oh no," Venus teased. "Should I be worried?" He smiled. "Maybe, but not in the way you think." He reached into his coat pocket and pulled out a small velvet box. Venus blinked, unsure at first, then her breath caught. Inside the box sat a modest but beautiful ring, a simple gold band with a tiny sapphire, just like the sky on the day they'd first met. "I've spent years with cameras in my face, but I've never been more nervous than I am now," he said, kneeling beside the bed. "Venus, will you marry me?" The room was quiet except for the soft click of the heart monitor and Lila's gasp from across the room. Venus stared at him, tears welling up again, not from pain this time, but from something far sweeter. "Yes, Zane," she whispered, smiling. Through her tears, "Yes," Lila squealed, rushing over and throwing her arms around both of them. "Does this mean I get to wear a pretty dress?" Zane laughed. "Not just pretty, sweetheart. The prettiest. The wedding wasn't a grand celebrity affair. It was held in a small chapel on the edge of town, the same one where Zane's parents had married decades before. Venus wore a borrowed gown, and Lila carried wildflowers in a hand-woven basket. The room was filled with warmth, not because of expensive chandeliers or famous guests, but because of hearts that had found their way back to one another. When the priest said, "You may kiss the bride," Lila clapped so hard she dropped her basket. A few months later, as spring crept in with birdsong and soft breezes, Zane and Venus welcomed not one, but 2 new additions to the family. A pair of healthy twins, a boy and a girl. In the delivery room, Zane had cried harder than anyone. Lila was the first to hold them after her parents. She looked down at their tiny fingers and said solemnly, "Don't worry, I'll help raise them right." Spoken like a true big sister, Venus murmured proudly. One Saturday morning, Zane invited Venus and Lila to visit his recording studio, now bustling more than ever. But this time they weren't guests. They were his family. He gathered everyone in the main hall. "I want to introduce you all officially," he said, resting a hand on Lila's shoulder. "This is my daughter, Lila. Some of you knew her as the girl who topped the auditions, but now you know why." Lila smiled shyly. "And this," he continued, turning to Venus, "is my wife, the woman who once sang me a song that changed my life." The staff applauded, not politely, but with real warmth. People had watched Zane change these past months. He smiled more. He listened more. And for the first time, he brought photos of Lila, Venus, and now the twins into his once pristine, impersonal office. One evening, long after the babies had been fed and tucked in, Zane and Venus sat on the porch of their new home, modest, sun-washed, and surrounded by trees. Lila sat on the swing, humming the same lullaby that started it all. "I used to think success meant crowds cheering," Zane said quietly, watching the stars. Venus leaned her head on his shoulder. "And now I think it means hearing our daughter sing while holding your hand." Venus smiled, eyes misty. "You always were poetic." "No," he said, "just finally learning what matters." And in the warmth of that porch, under the gentle music of crickets and children's laughter echoing from inside, a family once broken by silence found harmony again. Because sometimes the purest songs come not from studios, but from the hearts of those who've truly lost and found love. And love, when real, always finds its voice again. And so, the story of Lila Anderson comes to an end. From a poor little girl sitting quietly by her mother's hospital bed, to a young voice that silenced an entire auditorium. And finally, to a daughter who unknowingly found her lost father on a stage built for dreams. If this story touched your heart, we invite you to share your thoughts in the comments below. And don't forget to like and subscribe to our channel, so together we can preserve these stories of love, courage, and kindness in a world that often forgets them. We'll see you again on the next journey, where family, bravery, and quiet miracles continue to unfold.